Kirk Duckwell here with your Twin Cities real estate forecast for May 2026. All right, we're experiencing a bit of a rush of buyers out there right now, but how long is that activity going to last? We'll get into that in just a second and much more, but want to announce a class that we have coming up. This has been one of our most popular recently, and this is Home Inspections and Disclosures, Navigation and Negotiation, deep dive into what city by city inspections are required, as well as navigating those disclosure statements, digesting those as buyers, and then getting into approaching the negotiation process once you get those inspection results from both a buyer and seller perspective. All right, so yeah, that class is coming up May 30th, Veterans Memorial Community Center, Inver Grove Heights, 10:30 to noon. Hope you can make it there. All right, let's dive into what's happening here in our Twin Cities marketplace. All right, yeah, the heat map is really starting to pick up as far as the shortening time on market. A lot of this has to do with the showing activity, which we'll get to in just a second. But I just want to show you a quick comparison. We're watching areas that were cooler before really starting to pick up, like Inver Grove Heights, now down to 21 days. Brooklyn Park down to 19 days. Even like Elko, which was in the cool zone, 22 days. We have Mendota Heights down to 4 days on market. And this, we can see, is in contrast to where we were just last month, right? We're seeing these areas really fill in with the oranges and reds. Things are heating up out there. So we have seen a little bit of a retreat on our median sale price forecast for the Twin Cities. So good news for buyers, not as great for sellers, but we're not talking massive differentials either. 407 was our projected peak. Now that's down to 4029. But then the general trajectory overall holding very similar to last month's forecast, keeping it in that elevated range close to 400 through July. All right, looking at the showings forecast out there, what I mentioned at the beginning of this video, yeah, we're in this elevated area right now. Well, a lot of that is kind of a wave that's held off. We came into this year down 18% and held that range almost through mid-February before we saw things pick up. And then really as we came out of Easter, we saw a pretty big hop in that activity level and is expected to stay where we're at. Really, this week is another one of those top weeks, and then easing back as we get into the latter half of this month and then moving into that summertime. However, we are, as mentioned, expecting those sale prices to kind of stay in that more elevated range for a while, but just not seeing necessarily as much competition. So for buyers, you may want to just make sure you're not just jumping the gun on making high offers, really checking those activity levels for those areas. And for sellers, also just being more patient, waiting for that right offer. Don't feel it's so bad if you don't happen to get an offer in the first couple of days as we get into this kind of mid part of the year. All right, where does this leave us with our market meter? All right, so looking at that market meter, we barely overall across the board made it into that seller's market territory for all property types. And we can see here we're retreating a little bit. And now, stable market range, but the market is starting to slow down, and that's because of inventory, right? Showing activity might be peaked, but supply and demand, we are seeing inventory levels up by 8%. It's almost 800 listings in our Twin Cities area we have more than last year at this same time. When we look, though, at single family only, we can see that market is moving a good amount faster, that the market is more in that seller's market territory even still, and likely to hold there through mid-May into the latter half before going into that stable market territory. So what does this mean for buyers and sellers out there? Well, for buyers, kind of mentioned this last month. You want to be patient at this point in time. Things are going to get better. You're going to have more opportunity. You already have more opportunity than last year at the same time. I know that people watching the market, it looks like everything is going in 2 seconds in certain price ranges, certain areas, but that is going to slow down, and we will see a pretty positive second half of the year for buyers. For sellers, well, now is your time to shine. You have that window of opportunity for a little bit longer, but as that supply goes up, we're just not going to see as much showing activity per listing out there. And then we get into that second half of the year, yeah, it's going to be quieter for sellers out there. If you would like to know where the market meter sits for your home or what your house is worth, or thinking about getting into the purchasing of a house and want to know what the market is doing for what you're looking at, please always feel free to reach out 651-303-0019, or you can send me an email, kirk@kirkduckwall.com, or find us at housegeeks.com. All right, have a great day.